Hi, my name is Lydia and welcome to my studio. I appreciate you being here today. We're going to be painting Butterfly with Flower. I'll go over the materials that you need in order to do the painting. I'll also list those materials down in the description box and we'll walk together through the process. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So grab yourself something to stay hydrated and I'll meet you back at the easel. Let's go over the materials we're going to use today to do our painting. So I'm going to be working on a 9 by 12 inch Birchwood painting panel. And as you can see, it's wood. I got this from my local art supply store. And it is 1 5/8 inch thick. This is what it looks like on the back. You certainly could use a regular canvas if you like. The paint I'm going to be using today are acrylic paints in the colors Alizarin Crimson, Cadmium Red Medium, Cadmium Yellow Medium, Naples Yellow, Pthalo Green, Pthalo Blue, Dioxazine Purple, Paynes Gray, and Titanium White. The brushes I'm going to be using are going to be a 1/2 inch angle brush and a small round brush. This one is a number 4. I'm also going to be using today something that's going to make painting a little easier. You certainly could still use your small round brush, but I'm also going to be using a paint pen, and this happens to be a Posca pen. And I may be incorporating black and white, but I know I'll be using the black for sure. And it works like a pen. It has a very fine point on it, which works really well when you're trying to get small spaces. You're going to want a jar of water for rinsing your brushes, a towel or a paper towel for drying your brushes, and a mister bottle for keeping everything nice and damp. So let's get started. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and gessoed my wood panel and put my tracing on. So I'm going to start by doing the background, and I want the background to have a loose feel to it. So I'm going to start out with it being a peach first, and then I'm going to go over that when it's dry and do a turquoise color. So it's going to be a mix of both of those colors in the background. So what I've done to start is I have mixed up my what looks like a peachy color. So I took some of my cadmium red, a little yellow, and quite a bit of white, and mix those together. So it's more white and just a little bit of the cad red and the yellow to get the color that is the light peach color. I got a lot of paint on the brush. I'm gonna go with it. My brush is damp, and I'm just gonna start putting random strokes on my canvas. And if you find that you don't have enough moisture on your brush and you need to get it spread a little better, you can always just dip a little into the water and just start going. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get this covered. I want the whole panel covered with this peach color. So I went ahead and put the antenna on the butterfly, just so I knew where they were. They're gonna get covered up. We can go back and put them in later. I'm gonna try to stay loose with the background as much as I possibly can. So I will be doing a little bit of more tracing around the butterfly as I get close to it, but I'm trying to be very free with this, a little bit more loose, a little bit more free. And I've got this dark blue up there so I can see if I cover it up a little bit, I still will be able to see that it's there. And you can go in any direction you want right now because this is going to get covered up so your brush strokes can go however you want them to go. Most of it's going to get covered up. We're going to leave some of it showing through, but not all of it. In full disclosure, I did use paint over my tracing so that I can go over it a little bit if I need to, but still know where it is. So I just traced over it with, again, I did use a blue Posca pen. And I'm not going to worry about the edges of my canvas today because I'm actually going to go back in and paint those with a more dark color, maybe a darker blue, maybe a mixture of my Paynes Gray and the orange to create more of a black color. So you won't see me painting as I normally do the sides of the painting too much today. I'm just focused on the painting itself. So we will have to give this a little bit of time to dry. The great thing about these wood panels is that they do tend to absorb the paint very quickly. That's why it's important to have some gesso on before you get started with your paint. If not, you'll be putting a lot of layers of your color paints on. All right, so let's give this some time to dry and we'll be right back. So I went ahead and cleaned out my 1/2" angle brush, and I am going to mix up a very light yellow, and you can use water for this. I'm going to put a wash over this. Just be very mindful that when you're doing a wash and you use a lot of water, you may experience some paint underbinding. So that's why I got a little bit of my matte medium out. You don't have to do the matte medium. And I'm going to mix a little bit of my Naples Yellow into my matte medium. And I'm just going to use that thinned layer of pigment and just brush it into my butterfly. And all the lines that I drew before are still going to be there since I painted over them. And this part you don't have to do. You can wait till we come back and fill it in more. So we're just going to paint in. And we're going to be going back and layering over this. And you can even go a little bit outside the butterfly if you'd like, where we just allowed that peach color to dry, because we're going to have another layer of paint. That's why I'm doing this first. And it's just a light layer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this Alizarin Crimson, white, and then I'll just pick up what's left down here with my matte medium. And I'm just going to come in and do the same thing, just putting a light little wash into my flower petals only. This is just so that we know we've got a road map of where everything is. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm not going to rinse my brush, I'm going to dip a little bit into my Pthalo Green white. And I'm going to take it back a little bit with a little bit more of this Alizarin Crimson because I didn't have enough on my brush. And I'm just going to come down and sweep that in here into the stem. All right, and then I'm just going to rinse my brush out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a turquoise so we can start working on the background, the second layer of our background. So I'm going to take some of my Pthalo Blue, Pthalo Green, Titanium White. And I just want a little more white than that. And if you see these colors next to each other, this peach color and this turquoise color, and a little bit more of the green, maybe a hint of my yellow, cadmium yellow. That's getting a little dark. I don't want it too dark. Let's see what we got. A little bit more white. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to test this out. So let's take a hit. All right, I like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start just hitting that. We don't want to cover up all of our orange. So make sure you've got some moisture in your brush and just come in and just hit it in random spots. And you want to try to make sure that you're not making the same little cutout areas, the negative space that shows the orange through. You don't want them to be the same. And I'm going to grab some white and I'm just going to hit a little bit more white up in here to kind of blend into that. A little bit more of that blue. And you may not see a lot of the orange, but you know it's there. You're going to see enough of it to know that there is some orange under there. Down at the bottom, I may add just a little bit more of the green than the blue. So a little bit more of that Pthalo Green down here added to that color mixture. I do have my reference photos nearby. And we'll look at those. We'll take a peek at those before we move too far along. so in the beginning, this is going to look a bit unrefined, a bit messy, but that's not a bad thing as we're moving through. I'm just going to kind of go back and check out any areas that I think I might want to close up a little bit. I'll get into my petals a little more. Up close and personal with the petals. Now that I do have a little bit of this color mix that's the greenish color, I'm going to pull a little bit more green down and pick up just a tad of that cadmium yellow. So I just pulled some phthalo green into this mix here and the cad yellow. And I'm going to pull this up a little bit, and I'm going to just take this and just brush this down. And then I'm going to take a little white to that and brush into my stem. So I just know where it is in all of the chaos there. All right, and if you see anything that looks like it's just a straight line, it doesn't look too natural, and you want to go back and hit over it, you can. You can always go back and hit some more of your peach color in wherever you need to. All right, so I'm going to leave that alone, and we'll come back in. Remember, we're going to be adding other little pops of color here and there. We're going to come back and work on our flower, and then we'll work on the butterfly. So maybe we're going to let this dry. Okay, so I just wanted to take a minute to let you know that I do have reference photos that I am following and using as I paint. And this is, make sure I get this in the camera for you. So this is one photo of a butterfly that I have that I'm using, and then I have quite a few of them on their side as well, but this is another one that I have just so I can see the colors of the butterfly. And then also I have a reference photo of a coneflower. So I have something that I'm looking at, so visually it makes it a lot simpler when I'm trying to paint. And also this is pretty much a little small study that I did with a butterfly turned toward the side view. So I can get an idea of how I want to approach this painting with all the references that I have. So just wanted to let you know that. So we're going to go ahead and get back to our painting. Okay, so I'm still working with my half-angled brush, and what I've done is I've mixed some Alizarin Crimson, some Paynes Gray, and some of my white, and I've got this really nice muted purple color, and I'm going to start using this paint color to just fill in some of the dark areas between some of the petals, and maybe even hit some of the petals with it. So the dark areas are down in between the petals here. So I just want to come in and just put little darker areas here. They're not going to be quite as pure of a pink color as the actual petals themselves. I'm actually going to take that same color because what happens is it's dark through the middle part of the flower here, and then it gets a little lighter on the top. So I'm going to take this and just using strokes that are more vertical, I'm just going to dot in some of this color here as well. I'm just going to kind of work it in between. So this isn't about refinement. So when you start a process of anything, it really isn't about the refinement of that process in the beginning. It's about taking the first steps, getting the colors on the canvas. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some of this color and maybe just swipe it just a little bit down on my stem, just a little bit. And then I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to sweep it through the white and get a little bit of my Cadmium Red Medium. And then I'm just going to start filling in my coneflower with that. And this is that next layer. It's not meant to be the brightest layer yet. But I'm trying to stay loose, free. And I may even take some of that and put it up above where that darker color is. I'm not really filling in the whole thing. And I may even take some of this color and just kind of pop it here and there around our little butterfly friend, and maybe pull some out randomly through the painting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment to get this to dry, and then we're going to come. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my small brown brush, I'm going to wet it, and we're going to start mapping out with Naples Yellow and white where I know that I want my brightest yellows on my butterfly to be. So I'm looking at my reference photo, and I'm going to take my Naples Yellow and my white, and I'm going to start filling in where I know the brightest yellow is going to be. And it's actually my bottom wing, or bottom half of my front facing wing, and this is the top. So I'm going to start with, looking at my reference photo, I'm going to start with this here being very yellow. So all the areas that are within this realm are very yellow. I'm still going to leave those little lines in the middle because that's where I'm going to go back over with my black. Or if we want to do Paynes Gray mixed with some orange, that'll create a black for you. However you want to approach it. And we will have some black areas mixed in here. I'm just going to go ahead and fill all of that in with this yellow. Some of this is going to be black here, but I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Get some clarity on my butterfly. Bring things into focus. I'm still trying to be quite loose, but I am going to stay in these lines as I start to bring some of this yellow in though. And I'm just going to keep moving along, just getting these parts filled in again with this yellow just to brighten it up. Naples Yellow and white all the way. Okay, so once you get your butterfly filled in with the Naples Yellow and white, we'll come back once it dries and we'll start hitting some of the darker colors on the butterfly with our Posca pen, but I'm going to let that dry. And then I'm going to mix up some of my Phthalo Blue and Alizarin Crimson, no white. I want a little bit more alizarin. So what I'm going to come in and do is I'm going to start to divide these petals on my coneflower. So I'm going to start putting this purple in on the bottom of each flower that I just mixed. So I'm going to come along and just start refining. This is where the refinement starts to come in, and I'm going to quickly just kind of go along on the bottom edges. And by bottom, I mean all the edges of the petals that are more on the right side of my canvas. And with this small round brush, you're able to kind of get into the little small pointy parts of the petal. Again, we're still just trying to work nice and loose. And then I'm not rinsing my brush. I'm going to grab a little bit more of my titanium white. And this time I'm going to come up to my cadmium red and mix it in. So I didn't rinse the purple color I had on my brush, but I want a little bit more cadmium red and a little more white. I'm going to come on the top side of the petals, stroke that along. And I'm just following the contour of the petals themselves. Then I am going to stick my brush in the water, get some white, find a little spot down here near these colors. And I'm going even lighter, and I'm going to come in and hit it at the very top of each one. Just nice little, following the contours. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush out and then just wet the brush and come along and start at the bottom of each petal and make little circular motions to blend them all together. Keeping the brush wiped, so as you go from each petal, you can put your brush in the water, wipe it, put your brush in the water, and make little small circular motions to blend all of that in. So in between each petal, I'm wiping my brush, I'm getting it wet, and I'm starting from the bottom of the petal and just making circular motions and working it up. If it gets a little too wet, just be careful not to have too much water dripping down your brush. And just keep working. And that's a little too blue, so I'm going to come back into my Alizarin Crimson and just kind of blend that. So we're not quite done yet, we're getting there. And this line here I don't like, so again I'm going to grab my Alizarin Crimson and I'm just going to come in and make little circular motions. All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take titanium white, a very light touch of the alizarin, very light touch, so mostly white. A really light dot, like a nice little light dot. And just come back in, and we're just going to start to put that in. I'm going to add a little bit, just a little hint of blue. A little too much blue. Get some white. We really want to go white on that. There we go. Mix that all in a little better. And I'm going to come back into this Alizarin Crimson and Pthalo Blue together, but more alizarin. And I just want to go along where these petals meet each other and touch each other at the very base of the round part of the flower. And just kind of get that. We'll be hitting a little green in there in just a little bit, but having that little bit of purple is key. I want to make a little bit more of a stroke there because I don't really like that line is still there. Okay. And then I'm going to take my brush. I'm not rinsing it out. I'm going to take some more white, and this time I'm going to take some. So that purpley color was there, and I'm just grabbing some of the cadmium red. I'm just going to come back in and maybe just hit that. It's just all these variations of purple. I'm going to hit these at the very top of the flowers, and I could bring some of it down a little more if needed. All right, and then I'm going to get that color out of my brush. And if you remember back to our photo, the very top here of the flower, it starts out as an orangey color. So I'm going to take some of my cadmium red and cadmium yellow and some of the white, going back to this original orange color. And I'm just going to start making horizontal strokes. And you don't have to have this completely mixed together. But follow along the curve of your plant, center. And then we're going to keep it dark down at the bottom. So I'm just going to keep the purple down here at the very bottom, because we will be adding a little bit of green to that. All right, so we are just going to let that dry because we're going to come back and mess with that just a little more with some greens and some highlights. But what I want to do now is I want to rinse out my brush, and I'm going to go to my Posca pen. And here's where we are going to start to put the black into our butterfly. So along the large area here is where there's a lot of the black that's filled in. So, and again, if you don't get this correct, it's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and along this straight edge here, it's all black. I'll try to keep my hand out of the way, but it may be a little challenging. And in order to get your paint to flow, there's a little area here that you have to push down and get the paint to flow if it's not flowing for you. And you can always dip the tip of this also in your water if you need to. I'm also going to start doing some lines along the way as I'm filling in what's black and what's not. So this is black. Now remember, the patterns on these butterflies can vary, so you can definitely adjust it if you need to, if you find that you've kind of gone off the rails a little bit. And then over here, these edges are the other wing. And all I'm doing is I'm just filling in my tracing. Right. And then on the body is this little area here. And then we have a little top area of the head. And then we have that goes across there. Right. So once you have your butterfly the way you want it with the black on it, and I know it still looks a little messy right now, but we are going to come back in and hit some other colors on it, not to worry. We're going to work a little bit more down on our flower. So I'm going to take some of my Alizarin Crimson and mix it with my Cadmium Red. And if you remember up here, this is a pretty bright area here with the red. So I'm gonna get my paint brush wet and I'm gonna roll it in my paint there. And I'm just gonna make simple little strokes straight up and down and brighten this up. Right in here, the very top of the cone flower. And I'm making a round mound with that. And then I'm going to take some of my Pthalo Blue. So I grabbed some Pthalo Blue and just kind of moved it over into that mixture. And it's pretty dark as we come down in through here, but it's a purpley sort of red, purplish red color. And then I'm gonna get that color out of my brush. So I've got that color out of my brush and I'm gonna grab some of my Naples Yellow and I'm gonna stay up here in this brightish area and make those same little strokes. And if it mixes in a little bit with that red color, that's great. That's gonna brighten that up a little more. Let me work a little bit of it down, just a little bit. Then I'm gonna work some of that Naples Yellow and my Pthalo Green together. And down here, there's a little bit of these green areas right down where the flower petals meet this little base area. So we want this to be a brightish green area. And pull some of that up in here. And then I'm going to add some Pthalo Blue to that mixture. So my Naples Yellow, Pthalo Green, I'm gonna add Pthalo Blue to that. And I'm gonna come right below where that is and just start hitting that right where I put that green. Just below it. And maybe mix it in just a little bit to it. And that brightens that up. Okay. And then I'm going to take my titanium white and add just a little drop of the Alizarin Crimson to it. And I'm just going to come back along the tops of my petals and just make some strokes at the very top over all that you did earlier. And that'll brighten that up. And that can separate each petal there. Elongate that petal a little bit. Then I'm going to take a little bit more white. I didn't rinse my brush out. Put right a whole bunch of that white in that pink color and go even lighter. And you can start to blend that in a little better. That'll start to show the shapes of your petals a little more. little bit of that and just hit it up here just a little bit. Then I'm going to come back to my Pthalo Green and Pthalo Blue, and I want mostly green. I'll pick up some of this Cadmium Yellow, and then I'm going to come in and just pop it right along between the petals where they're not touching, just a little bit. Add a little white to that color, that green mixture I just made, and just kind of bring it around where my flower is. I'm going to add a little Naples Yellow to that so it gets even brighter. Hit it along my stem. Maybe even some around my petals. So this is really a loose painting, so I'm trying to stay, my whole goal with this painting was to try to stay as loose as I can. Maybe just tightening up a little bit around the butterfly because it's a little bit more of a detail. Hit some of that bright green up in here. All right, I'm going to keep moving along. I'm going to rinse my brush out. And I'm going to go back into my Naples Yellow and White. And just try to work another layer of yellow up here into my butterfly. I'm going to take some of that same yellow and just pop it along here. And I might even can get away with hitting a little bit of it on the flower here. And take some of that yellow and work it up into here a little bit. I know that this black paint's probably still a little wet, so I'm going to blend that a little bit into his head. And we're going to have to let that dry before you go any further because the black's going to have to get a little drier than that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bright green here. So I've got this Naples Yellow and Pthalo Green. I'm actually going to take a little bit of this pinky color to add to it. Just come down on this side of my stem. So then I'm going to take a little bit of my Alizarin Crimson and mix that in, even if you got some green there, or the turquoise. Hit it there. Go back into the green and just kind of hit that. All right, it's always good to take a minute to stand back. And I do want a little bit of a lighter blue at the top here, so while my yellow is still drying, I'm going to hit some light blue with my angle brush. So get my angle brush back. I want mostly my titanium white, and I'm going to go into a hint of my Pthalo Blue. See if I can get that pretty light. There we go. Mix that up. And I'm just going to come up and just randomly hit some of the light blues in here Then I'm going to add just a hint of my alizarin and just start hitting that a little bit around the butterfly. And then I'm going to take some of the alizarin and the cadmium, mix it into that blue color. And just start hitting it up here around the butterfly. And that looks very similar to the color that's down in the flower down there. But around the butterfly, it's gonna pop that yellow. And maybe even just a little bit back here. And it maybe speak to the fact that maybe there's some more cone flowers back in there a little bit. And I'm going to take my brush into my white without even rinsing it and just come along and just maybe get some hints of white. As I'm standing back, taking a look, I really need to let the black on my butterfly dry, and then we'll come back in and we'll lighten up some of the butterfly with a little bit more of a white mixture than yellow, and then we'll put all the little detail in its little body. We should be getting to the done point. So we're going to go in with our small round brush and start to brighten up some areas on our butterfly. So I have mixed up some titanium white. I cleaned up my palette a little bit, as you can see. I'm just kind of mixing up my white. I want this to be more white. So if you think about your butterfly, the wings are very thin. And so I'm going to give it that feel by going a little lighter on most of the wings themselves. And this part of the wing here is overlapping the back wing. And I want to make sure that we can see that to add dimension to our butterfly. So I'm going to start coming in with my little brush, my little small round brush, and just start going in and one more time, just brightening up some areas. And I'll probably speed you up eventually through this process, but I want you to make sure that you're layering up this yellow white color enough, and you'll be able to see once I do this back wing here, you'll be able to see that slight difference between the two. Still trying to stay a little loose, but I'm having to get in because of the wing. We want it to have a little bit of that refinement to it. So there you go. You can see the difference ever so slightly between what I've done with that whitish yellow color and what's here. And I'm going to continue to move on, keeping some of the areas a little darker, especially where I said earlier, where this part of the wing overlaps the back wing. And you might want to go over a few of the dark lines that are black just to soften them a little bit, because the yellow is a little transparent. So the yellow is transparent, so if you hit some of these black lines as well, you can start to soften those a little. And once you've done that, I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of my cadmium yellow. So it's a little darker yellow, and where these wings tend to overlap, I'm going to curve that a little more with that yellow, that darker yellow color, the cadmium yellow. And then I'm going to pull some of the cadmium red down into that. A little bit more of the yellow. And mix that in with some of this white. And I'm going to come in, especially on the bottom wing, where these little parts are that are part of the second bottom wing. Just going to start to put in a little bit of that nice light orange color. I'm just making little comma strokes to fill in those areas. And while I have this peach color on my brush, I'm going to start kind of reaching this more into my butterfly. And just on the left side here, then I'll add just a little bit more of my cadmium red and come up and make that a little bit more full. Not covering all of the paint that's already there, but just brightening that up a little bit at the top. I'm going to rinse the yellowy orange color out of my brush. I want to make sure I get all of that pigment out. And I'm going to come back into my Pthalo Blue, a little bit of Pthalo Green, and I'm going to pick up some titanium white. And I want this to be more of almost a darker turquoise color. I'm going to add a hint of the cad yellow. And I'm going to come into this area that's right here where the black areas are. And I'm just going to start to make that little refinement of the area just at the edge of each little black area that's segmented with the lines. I'm going to go a little lighter with that even. So I'm going to come up and pick up some more of this white. And I'm going to put it beside this color here that's next to it because I want it to be even lighter. And come up to the top and sweep some of that in here. On the top wing. And then I'm going to do the same thing here on this back wing, just little small little comma strokes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to come back to this darker color and I'm going to come down into my Paynes Gray. And I want this to be even darker. So it's kind of a lighter gray blue. And I'm just going to come in and maybe work this color in just a little bit, so where there's maybe a little bit of the yellow showing through on these little black areas, maybe just hitting it in just a little bit. Giving that a little bit more character. And I'm going to take that same color and just kind of hit around the petals. We're going to do a little bit more work down here on the petals with just our purple. I haven't added the Diox purple yet, and that's been on purpose. And then I'm going to take more green, just mix it into this darker color, and a little cad yellow, and come back in and hit some of this bright green. Here we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush. This is just a little bit of refinement. Actually, I think what I'm doing is I'm going to take some of that bright green color and bring it down to my stem. And maybe hit that just a little bit down here. And I'm going to rinse my brush out. And I'm going to come into my Diox purple. So I'm going to pull that off to the side. Come into my titanium white. I'm going to add just a touch of my Alizarin Crimson. Some more of that white. And I'm just going to go along and just make little swipes on my petals, mainly down on the bottom edges of the petals. And I'll go up in here and just put in some of those little purple dots there. And I'm going to lighten up my purple now even more, and then start to hit that around about the middle parts of your petals, not necessarily covering up the white that we did. And again, I'm just making long strokes, breaking up any lines that may be there. I'm going to keep this little shadow under here of this petal. Then I'm going to take this lighter purple color and I'm going to add just a drop of my blue. Just a little much there, so I want a little bit more Diox purple and white. Want that to be a little lighter, so I'm going to pull quite a bit of the white down into it. I'm going to start maybe hitting some purple areas around my butterfly. It's because that will make that yellow more noticeable, because they are opposite each other on the color wheel. And I'm going to go even lighter and maybe put some up here. And I'm going to come back to my Pthalo Blue. I didn't rinse my brush. And some white. Mix that in. And make some of those strokes, just random little strokes. I'm going to come back in just a little bit and do just a little bit more of that. But I wanted it to be a little lighter up here in the top and break up any little line areas that you see. You can certainly use your bigger brush for that. And I'm going to come down to the Pthalo Green and start to work that down. A little bit more green and just work that down. I still have quite a bit of that orange that we started out with. So now that we're working the greener color in, coming around this reddish orange center of our flower, the orange with the green and the red, so the reddish. So when we put the green around this reddish orange, those are also opposite on our color wheel. So I'll make that pop. I'm gonna break this up a little bit. If you see some areas that you're not liking, now's the time to maybe break up some of those areas before we start getting into getting crazy and detailed. And I want to go a little darker down in the bottom, so I'm going to do Pthalo Blue, Pthalo Green, and some Cad Yellow. I'm actually going to add a hint of my Cadmium Red to take it back a little bit, and then come down here and hit some of these darker areas. So if you see some lines you don't like down here, so I'm getting all the pigment out of my brush. And I'm coming in with the white, and this is where if you want to use your brush or your Posca pen, you can. And I'm going to hit a few areas outside of the black edges of my butterfly. And again, I'm making just these little small curved strokes on the wings, on the back edges of the wings. And I'm also going to do a little bit of that, a straight line, just not a complete straight line, but hitting a few areas on this edge of the wings. And this is where you can start to make it your own, starting to add a little more detail. I'm going to come into my Paynes Gray with my color mixture that I have on my brush. That was just a little bit of that blue color. I'm going to come back in and hit this little head here. And coming back into my white, I did get some of that paint off my brush. And I'm going to hit some white one more time to brighten up my petals on areas where I think there may be a little more light. And then close to the butterfly, I'm going to take my white and just hit a little bit of that white on this side. Just little light dots so our eye can move toward our butterfly. I'm also going to hit a little bit of a white highlight down on my stem. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of my Alizarin Crimson. And I'm going to take that back with a hint of the Pthalo Green. And I'm going to come on this side and just hit that just a little bit. And then come back into that darker green and move that up between the petals. So kind of know where our stem is a little more, just a little Pthalo Green in there. Just some plain white. Again, just going into my white, no pigment on the brush, just the white. And right where these two wings are separated, I'm going to hit back here. And then bring that around to there. And blend that down a little bit. Went back and picked some Naples Yellow up. All right, liking the way that looks. I'm gonna let everything dry that I just did because I did a lot of work through here, and this is where we need to put the legs, the eye, and the proboscis on the butterfly. So we're gonna go ahead and put the legs and the proboscis on our butterfly, and I did zoom in so you can see a little better. I'm gonna start by putting the eye on first. So I'm gonna take that Paynes Gray color that I have, add a tad of the Pthalo Blue and some white. I'm just gonna come up in here and I'm gonna try to keep my hand out of the way. And just put a little eye in there. And then grab a little tip of the white and just little tiny couple dots in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Posca pen, the black one that I was talking about and that we used earlier. And I've actually taken a pencil, just a regular graphite pencil, and you can barely see them, and did it very light. I did draw out on the canvas where I want these little delicate legs to go. So I'm going to come right in, straight in, and I'm going to do the antenna, nice light touch. And then there's a leg here. A leg here. And a leg there. And one back here that's actually holding them on the petal. And then there's two that are straight down. And then the proboscis, which is digging down into the yumminess of our flower. And give that a moment to sit there. And I'm gonna use my white Posca pen. Make sure I've got the paint flowing. And again, you can use a thin brush, liner brush. I'm gonna come up here and just right behind where all these little areas are, just get a nice little, a bit more of that outline around the outer edge. Come down here to the little tail end. And even down here, underneath the butterfly. And then I'm gonna just take this and hit it a little bit, not outlining, just little areas on the antenna and the proboscis and the legs. All right, and if there's anywhere else that you may want to have some highlights hit, you certainly can. All right, the final step to any painting is to sign it. So I'm gonna sign it down here on the bottom right. I'm using a light blue Posca pen, but you certainly can use your brush to sign it. I hope you enjoyed yourself today, and until next time, we're all done. Thank you for your company today, and I hope you created something very special for yourself. Until next time, bye-bye.